You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.
Favorite location that
Yeah.
you have been to?
Oh, you know, I would probably say Africa was amazing. And I never really had what much of a want or need to go there. Funny enough, I ended up there because of some guy, and I stayed. The guy didn't work out, and Africa just left a huge impact on my soul for the last 25 years. It was, I have been all over the world, and I would say that 4 month trip is something that will never be comparative to
How
anything
about
else. I
how
don't
about
think.
because I either read or you mentioned you loved Alaska. True.
I loved Alaska, definitely. For me, that was different though, because Alaska was 8 years.
Hmm.
Alaska was my life for a big chunk of it. And Africa was a trip, it was an adventure. So maybe that would have been different if I was in Africa for 8 years and Alaska for 4 months. I don't know. But Alaska definitely, it was more of a I belong there, I fit, more of a natural kind of flow of where I belonged, where Africa was definitely an adventure.
Now, where were you in Alaska, or were you bouncing around? Because I have been to, my wife and I have gone to Alaska, and it was more of a cruise in different
Okay.
spots, as you go along, and all the way up to the Arctic
Yeah.
Circle, actually. But I'm just curious where you.
Oh, nice. No, I haven't been that
Yeah, we
far.
stopped at
I lived in
Homer.
Homer.
Where would that be compared to popular
Yeah.
locations, if there is?
So it is south of
Okay.
Anchorage by about 5 hours, I would say, on the Kenai Peninsula. So there is the end of the road in the northern hemisphere in southern Alaska, and that's Homer. And there's the end of the road on the northern part of Alaska, and that's Barrow. So I was 6 miles from the end of the road in the northern hemisphere.
Now, I will
Yes.
say,
And that is where I started my chefing career up there, 6 miles from the end of the road on the northern continent.
cooking salmon.
Well, I did a lot of that,
Yeah, I'm
yes.
sure. I mean, I will say, I certainly haven't traveled as much as you, but Alaska was amazing. Just no matter where we
Yeah,
were, it was like majestic. It was picturesque everywhere. I
it
mean,
is. That's a really
non.
good term for
I
it.
mean, I couldn't believe how large. First of all, because you're on a cruise ship and it's going
Yeah,
along these mountains
yeah.
forever and ever and ever. And then you stop at these locations, and I was like,
Hmm.
hey, yeah, yeah, this is unbelievable. I mean, just a really.
Right. Yet another beautiful scenic
Right, yeah,
spot.
and I mean, I have a photography background, so I shot over 1,000 photos just in one day. It was unbelievable. When you were younger, some traveling on your own, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So what brought me to Alaska? I had friends. I had traveled a little bit before then. I had friends from Australia that were living in Anchorage, so I went up to visit for a summer, and that was the beginning of 8 years. So it just got to me, and I was really fortunate in my younger years that I didn't succumb to a career, so to say.
Right.
And I was very open and fluid about where I wanted to be. And I found myself in a lot of spots, not specifically because of work or of money, but because it fit and I loved it. And I just figured out how to make it work for myself. And Alaska was one of those places. So when I got there, I went to visit my friends in Anchorage, and then just after a few weeks with them, took off on my own to go check things out. And if anyone has ever been to Homer, there's the highway from Anchorage goes down the Kenai Peninsula, and when you get to Homer, there is what is called the overlook on the highway. So you driving through the tundra and the woods, and all of a sudden you're looking at like one of those Alaskan scenes. Like you come out of these woods and these trees, and you're all of a sudden looking across the bay,
Mhm.
Kachemak Bay, to the Kenai Peninsula and the mountains beyond it, and it just was like this aha moment of like, how could I ever be anywhere else? Like, here I am,
Hmm.
you know?
It's like a
and
painting.
um, and I stayed for 8 years.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, it really. And if you're into that, I mean, I lived off the grid. I didn't have water, and we had to chop wood and haul water and do all that stuff. And I loved it. A lot of people that I met that came up for vacations, it's quaint, it's beautiful, but it's not
Mm-mm.
easy. Living there is definitely a hard living. And if you're not made of that stuff, you want running water.
Yes, I mean, just the backpedal, we flew over the Arctic Circle, went to a place called Wiseman. I mean, 13 people or 13 homes was at this location. And long story short, you take you off the bus and
Mhm.
you meet this gentleman who lives there off the grid. And I was like, oh my God, I could never
Yeah.
do this for a day. And he's doing it, for life. But again, it was just
Yeah.
amazingly beautiful. I mean, I mean, really isolated, but how long do you think you could
Yeah.
isolate yourself from people? I'm talking, and I
Um,
mean no contact, no phones, nothing. How long do you think you could go?
Yeah, it's hard. And that was really hard for me when I did live up there. Not that I was completely
Hmm.
isolated, but it's very isolating. It is. It's not like living in, as what we call the lower 48 down here. Socializing is a different term up there. So I have definitely, one of these conversations that I had with someone in Vermont that kind of uh, was the motivation for me to start writing these things. I just remember her saying, I was telling her about, she was asking me all kinds of stuff about where I'd been and what I'd done. And, one of them was Colorado and then it was Alaska. And I was talking about my travels and everything. And she was like, wow, you must really like the cold. And I was like, what? Like, no. Like, why would you say that? Not even dawning on me, like, well, obviously, right? And she was like, well, most of these places that you've lived are just really remote and they're very either far north or very high altitude, or like, I just assumed you must like the cold. And I thought about it for a minute and I was like, not necessarily. I just don't like people. And there's not a lot of people in these places that I end up.
I mean, yeah,
I thought, wow,
when
that's
we were there,
interesting.
it was actually like 60, 70 degrees. I mean, we went in June, but
Right,
yeah,
which is hot
exactly
for
right. I
them.
mean, but
Yeah.
again, just don't like people. Okay.
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. I thought, oh wow, I never really looked at it that way.
how long did it take you to write this book or these books? Because you got to I mean, you got to be organized and put it
um,
down on paper and finish it to where people can buy it.
well, yeah, you have to have a bit of luck too, and time is good. So, once again, I found myself with a bunch of time on my hands when COVID hit because I was in the service industry. I was a chef. I was running my own
Hmm.
B&B. I had cooking classes in an event center, and I had all these different things going on, but they were all in the service industry. And when COVID hit, that all took a huge
Hmm.
dive. So I found myself all of a sudden in the real estate market because I had a house and had fixed it up and was looking to sell it. And I had a lot of time on my hands. So that's what happened. I was like, okay, well, I guess now's the time.